our second video on non-legal research. In this video, we're going to cover mostly looking for information about people like lawyers and judges and expert witnesses, and a little bit about finding a few statistics on a couple of sources. So we're going to start on Lexis Advanced because they have one of my favorite tools, the Litigation Profile Suite. Before we take a look at that, I just wanted to show you how you would get to those public records I talked about in the first video. Again, you'd only use these if a supervisor had asked you to get this kind of information. There's a link here off the main screen that'll take you to that public records suite. Also under this drop-down menu is a link to the public records. Under the drop-down, we also have access to the Litigation Profile Suite, which is the resource that we're going to look at first. And you can see here that this is a resource where we can look up information about expert witnesses, judges, and attorneys. We're going to start with a search for expert witnesses. And I just wanted to show you that I've already kind of narrowed some categories here, that if you use the drop-down, you don't need to know the name of a particular expert witness. That works too, of course, if there's someone you already have in mind. But you can limit by location and also by area of expertise so that, for example, if you were looking for somebody who was an expert in some kind of agricultural business like crops or farm management, you could limit there. I'm looking for someone who's an expert in psychology and is also located in Massachusetts. You don't need to fill anything into the white space up here. You can just click the search. And you'll see we get 367 results. We could further narrow over here on the left, but I know I want to just take a look at one of these to show you some of the features. And we're going to look at this person here, Carol J. Ball. And you can see that we're getting a little snapshot in the front. We can look at the jury verdicts and settlements that she was a part of. There's some expert witness materials, the cases that she was an expert witness in, some information from them, as well as some secondary source materials like other directories that mention her as an expert witness. Some of these visuals can be helpful if there's enough case information. Sometimes if they're only talking about one or two cases, it's not so helpful. So you can see that she was involved in this settlement. There's some expert witness analysis to give some more information about particular cases she was involved in. And then she was involved in all of these cases, 74 cases here, as well as some other secondary materials that she might have been mentioned in. So let's just take a very quick look at one of these expert witness analysis reports. We'll look at one of the more recent ones from 2011. And you can see this can be kind of helpful because it tells you the discipline that she's an expert witness in, the case name, that this is a summary of citation information, what the docket number was, and who she was retained by. Okay? So just some good information if you happen to have a report on one of the expert witnesses that you were looking for. So we can also use the Litigation Profile Suite to look up information about judges and attorneys. Let's quickly look for a judge. I think the best thing to do is first limit to your jurisdiction. I'm going to limit to Massachusetts here. And if you start typing in the judges' names, a lot of times you don't even need to run a search because it just autofills. I'm looking for a judge in the Massachusetts Superior Court, William Sullivan. And if I look at this information, you'll see there's I can see jury verdicts, briefs, pleadings, and motions, some secondary materials, some articles in the news. These can sometimes not be that helpful because they might be talking about another William Sullivan. It's kind of a common name. And depending on how long the judge has been a judge, this is a Superior Court judge, so there's not as much information here. If I was looking for a federal court appeals judge, there'd be more. And I can see sort of the ruling history. Again, these pictures, if there's not very many cases that they represent, it might not be that helpful. I can look at the settlement records, etc. All right, we can also use the Litigation Profile Suite to look up information on attorneys. Again, I'm going to limit to Massachusetts, and I'm going to look for an attorney who I know, David Clancy. And he practices in Boston, so this is probably him. And you can see again, we're getting similar kinds of information. What's his practice area? In which courts is he practiced by jurisdiction? Cases that he's been involved with. So if we wanted to look up and see arguments he had made in some of these filings, we could look at that. If we want to get a sense of the kind of companies he's represented, we could look at that. So before we leave Lexis Advance, I just wanted to mention that if you don't have that litigation profile suite, there's some other, you have that here as an academic, so you can use it for class, but if you don't have it at work, there are some other materials here off the main page that could be helpful. There are some directories here. We're not going to run a search, but I'll just show you that there's information about judges and attorneys here. There's also an expert witness directory located under directories. So this information here maybe isn't as robust as the litigation profile suite, but it might be something that you have access to at work, so I wanted to mention it. And also this expert witness analysis can be helpful if it's something you have at work. You can look up experts by state. You can see whether expert witness, whether their testimony has been challenged. Sometimes you can find their resumes, etc. Okay, we're going to move on to look at some of the similar sources on Westlaw. Here I want you to be looking for information under the directories. There are a lot of different directories here, including, again, some expert witness directories where you can get resume, West Legal Directory where you can look up expert witnesses, lawyers, judges. But the one that I really want to focus on today is this profiler, and we're going to look at attorneys, judges, and expert witnesses. We're just going to look at everything. And if I had narrowed this to just an expert witness search, let me actually go back and do that for 1 second here. If I had just gone into expert witnesses in the advanced search, I'd have some other fields. For example, I could limit by area of expertise. One thing I want to mention is these areas of expertise are not going to be exactly the same as what you see on Lexis. And the expert witnesses, we're going to use Carol Ball again. She's on both Westlaw and Lexis, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes an expert witness will only be listed on one service or the other. So for class, you're going to want to check both. Just because I want to compare some of these features, I'm going to look for the one that we found on Lexis. Okay, I did a quick search without her middle initial, but I can tell from her area of expertise that this is the one I'm looking for, number 4, Carol J. Ball. So sometimes there's even a photo here and contact information. It varies a little bit what you're going to get. Under references, you can see the types of information that you'll have access to. Let me just slide our screen over. Okay, so you can see again the cases she was involved in, the underlying trial court documents, the dockets. You can even find her resume here. One thing that's really nice on Westlaw, if you happen to find an expert witness on Westlaw, are these reports. So if you take a quick look at these reports, we have 2 different kinds. We have the expert challenge report, where we can see whether her testimony was challenged in a particular case. So we can see that it was challenged in this case and it was excluded. Doesn't mean she isn't a good witness, of course. It could have been the kind of case and what she was asked to testify to, but it gives some sense, and we could go look at that testimony and try and understand why it was excluded. Look at the order there. The other report is the expert evaluator. And in this, when it loads, you'll see that we can see how many appearances she's had, what courts those have been in, what's the document type, was it the brief or testimony, the names of her clients, etc. You can also use the Westlaw Profiler to get information about attorneys and judges. So let's just look at David Clancy really quickly again. So I'm just running a quick search, David within 3 of Clancy, and limiting it to Massachusetts. And here just quickly we'll look at the kinds of information that you get on this database for David Clancy. We get references again, which include different kinds of documents, including the cases, the underlying court documents, secondary sources, and dockets for cases he's been involved in. And if we're lucky, we get one of these reports. And here we can look at this litigation history report. And we can see here when it opens up the clients that he's represented, the different types of matters he's been involved in, the different industries, who he represented, etc. So this could be really helpful if we're doing research on opposing counsel. Okay, let's do one more quick search for a judge. We're going to use the same judge, William Sullivan. And I'm going to do a similar search, William within 3 Sullivan, and limiting to Massachusetts. And I got a couple of results, but I can see this is the one I want because it's the one that has to do with a justice. We get some basic information about the court where he serves, his education, that he went to Boston College and Notre Dame. Again, we have references like we did on Lexis. We actually have a few more here. We have cases, the underlying trial courts, and the dockets. Again, this is because it's a superior court judge. If it was a federal court judge, would have more information, or a higher court judge in Massachusetts. And then what I wanted to show you are these reports. So there are a couple of reports that can be really helpful, including understanding whether this judge has been reversed before in the litigation history. So the judge reversal report will help you understand if his decisions, any decisions that he made, were appealed and what the outcome was. We can see that 2 were reversed and none have been affirmed, and the different types of cases they were. And there's also a litigation report, which gives you a little bit more of the history of the cases before the judge and what types of matters they were, when the dockets were initiated, who were the names of the parties, etc. Before we leave Westlaw and take a quick look at Bloomberg, I just did want to mention there are some other expert materials that are available to you here. So if you don't have the directory database at work, you could take a look at this expert materials, might be helpful. All right, we're just going to take a quick look at Bloomberg Law, and if you haven't logged in a while, it looks a little bit different. So I'm going to look under where it says Select Sources, Advanced Searches, which gives me some additional sources, including the ones that I talked about in the first video. The one that I'm looking at now is People. And you can see I can put in information about the person here, their first name, last name, where they're located, etc. This is really helpful when you're looking for business people, but I'll just put in my friend David again, just to give you a sense of what they have listed for him. And I'm going to put in state, Massachusetts. Okay, and this is who I'm looking for, David S. Clancy. And it gives us some information about where he practiced, what his educational history is. If this was an executive at a board, it would have his board membership, etc. So some basic biographical information. And this will vary depending on who the person is. Okay, before I end this video, it's getting kind of long, I just wanted to mention a couple of the sources that we talked about for free sources. One of those was this Mass Facts page, and you can see the kinds of categories of information. You can see there's background checks that you can do on attorneys or doctors, community information, prisoner searches, the sex offender registries, the top Boston schools, some information about politics, and if you want to take a quick look, you might see some other categories of information that are interesting. For attorneys, you can go up and, for example, look at their disciplinary records at the Board of Bar Overseers. We're running kind of long, so I'm not going to do that, but I just want to show you how you could use this list of free sources to get to other sources of information. The last thing I want to talk about was the Bureau of Labor Statistics website that I listed on the first slideshow. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics obviously has its own statistics about the Bureau of Labor and labor and employment statistics, but they also have this resource of statistical sites on the World Wide Web. So other U.S. federal statistics by agency and international statistics and statistics from all the different countries. So this can be a really good place to go to find out where you might go to look up different types of statistics. So I'm just going to look for a statistic really quickly at the Bureau of Labor Statistics to give you an example. And I'm going to use the search box. I'm looking on something that has to do with statistics of how many women, what women get paid, what their employment statistics are like. And I did a quick search for women, and I can see that there's a couple of different statistical data sets that might be helpful here. Some of them are a little bit old, but I'll just give you an example of this one, Women in the Labor Force, which was from 2015. So if I had a case where I was trying to compare some kind of statistics about what women get paid or men get paid or how many are in particular industries, these kinds of statistics can be helpful and are often used in litigation. Okay, so that's the end of the second video. We'll have one more video on non-legal research.